Rotary snowplow. Barreling down the tracks with a giant spinning wheel the size of a room, the rotary snowplow looks less like a train and more like a weapon built by a cartoon supervillain. This is a machine designed for one purpose and one purpose only: total war against snow. When winter buries railroad tracks under drifts taller than the train itself, ordinary plows simply give up. That's when the railroads unleash this spinning monster. The massive wheel bolted to its front whirls at brutal speed, chewing through packed snow like a giant blender and blasting it clear off the tracks in a towering white spray. It's loud, it's violent, and it's absolutely mesmerizing to watch. But here's the twist that makes it even stranger. Despite looking like one of the most powerful trains ever built, most rotary snowplows can't actually move on their own. They have no drive of their own. They need locomotives shoving them from behind just to push into the snow. Some of these beasts are over a century old, dragged out only during the worst storms on Earth. So this terrifying, snow-devouring machine that looks like a railroad meat grinder, it's really just a plow that needs a push. Railroad omnibus. Couldn't decide between taking the bus or the train. German engineers once said, "Why not both?" and built the Schi-Stra-Bus. This bizarre hybrid was designed to cruise down normal roads like an everyday bus, then roll straight onto railway tracks using retractable rail guidance gear. The idea was pure convenience. Passengers could stay glued to their seats instead of hopping off a bus to catch a train, making travel through the countryside faster and far smoother. On paper, it looked like genius, a single vehicle that erased the line between road and rail. But reality wasn't so kind. The Schi-Stra-Bus was expensive to maintain, demanded specialized infrastructure at every switch point, and never actually beat regular buses and trains at their own jobs. It was a jack of two trades and a master of neither. As transport networks modernized, this awkward road-rail oddball quietly rolled into history. Still, it stands as a fascinating monument to bold engineering ambition, proof that sometimes the wildest idea is to smash two completely different machines together and dare them to work as one. M497 Black Beetle. Strap two jet engines to a train and what do you get? A 180-mile-per-hour monster called the M497 Black Beetle. This wasn't science fiction. It was a very real 1966 experiment fueled by one reckless question. Just how fast can steel wheels on steel rails actually go? The engineers at New York Central Railroad didn't want to rebuild the entire rail network to find out, so they went rogue. They grabbed a plain old Bud rail car, bolted two aircraft jet engines straight onto the roof like a homemade rocket, and unleashed it down a dead-straight stretch of Ohio track. What happened next was pure madness. The Black Beetle tore across the plains at over 180 miles per hour, a speed nobody thought a train could touch back then. It looked absurd. It sounded like the apocalypse. It moved like a missile that forgot it was supposed to be a train. This monster was never built for passengers or daily runs. It was a raw, screaming test of physics and guts, gathering data engineers could get no other way. And it worked. The Black Beetle stands as proof that sometimes the wildest, most unhinged idea is exactly the one that rewrites the rulebook. GM Aerotrain. Behold the train that looked like a spaceship and rode like a rockslide, the GM Aerotrain. When it debuted in 1955, it looked like it had crashed through a portal from the future. Sleek, low-slung, and dripping with style, it was built from lightweight bus-style cars designed to cut costs and crank up speed. On paper, it was the hero the dying rail industry desperately needed, a sexy answer to the cars and airplanes stealing all its passengers. Then people actually rode it, and the dream fell apart, one violent bounce at a time. That ultralight body was its downfall. Every crack in the old tracks rattled through the cabin, every curve threw riders sideways, and passengers learned the hard way that futuristic and comfortable are not the same thing. Railroads put it on their biggest routes, and the complaints poured in fast, loud, jarring, and exhausting on anything longer than a quick trip. The Aerotrain slammed home one merciless lesson. Nobody cares how gorgeous a train looks if the ride makes them sick. Just a handful were ever built before it quietly disappeared, forever remembered as one of rail history's most spectacular near misses. Brennan gyroscopic monorail. A train balancing on a single rail sounds impossible, yet in 1907, Brennan built exactly that, and it refused to tip over. His machine seemed to laugh in the face of physics. While every normal train spread its weight across two rails for stability, Brennan's rode on just one thin line of steel. So how on earth did it stay upright? The secret was hidden inside, two massive gyroscopes, spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute. A spinning gyroscope fiercely resists being tilted the same reason a spinning top stays standing. The moment the train leaned even slightly, those gyroscopes shoved it right back to center, keeping it perfectly balanced. Brennan even ran two of them spinning in opposite directions, canceling out unwanted forces while locking in rock-solid stability. The result was jaw-dropping, a train that could carry passengers, lean smoothly into corners, and even stand dead still on a single rail without tipping. Crowds were stunned, convinced they were staring at the future of travel. But the system was expensive and mechanically complex, so plain old two-rail trains won the day. More than 100 years later, the Brennan monorail remains one of the boldest, weirdest, most brilliant train experiments ever built. Rail Zeppelin. Slap a giant aircraft propeller on the back of a train and what do you get? The Schienenzeppelin. Quite possibly the most useless fast train ever built, and yet a record-shattering legend. Dreamed up in 1930s Germany by engineer Franz Kruckenberg, this bizarre machine tossed out everything trains were supposed to be. Instead of drawing inspiration from locomotives, it borrowed from airships and airplanes, wrapped in a sleek, feather-light body built purely for speed. There was no traditional engine driving the wheels instead. A massive aircraft engine sat at the rear, spinning a huge propeller that literally pushed the train down the tracks like a plane that forgot how to fly. And it worked terrifyingly well. In 1931, it screamed to a rail speed record of over 230 km/h, leaving engineers stunned. But there was a catch several, actually. It couldn't easily haul passengers or cargo, and that exposed whirling propeller made it downright dangerous around stations and people. Too strange and too impractical for everyday railways, it never made it past the experimental stage. Still, the Rail Zeppelin remains one of the boldest, wildest attempts to reinvent the train and airship that escaped onto the rails and refused to slow down. Hamster wheel train. Deep in the Swiss mountains, a train climbs a slope so steep it looks physically impossible, and it does it inside spinning barrels. Meet the Stoosbahn, the steepest passenger railway on the entire planet. At its wildest point, the track pitches at a jaw-dropping 110% gradient, an angle so brutal that a normal train would leave passengers lying flat on their backs, staring at the sky. So Swiss engineers threw out the rulebook and got clever. They built the cabins as giant rotating barrels that tilt and adjust automatically as the train climbs. No matter how steep the mountain gets, the floors inside stay perfectly level, keeping passengers upright and comfortable the entire way up. But from the outside, it looks absolutely ridiculous, like a row of giant hamster wheels rolling up the mountainside, each one spinning to stay balanced. It's bizarre. It's mesmerizing. It looks like something a cartoon engineer dreamed up on a dare. And yet this strange contraption safely carries thousands of passengers up the slopes every single year, smooth as can be. The Stoosbahn is living proof that in engineering, the weirdest-looking solution is sometimes the most brilliant one on Earth. Wuppertal Suspension Railway. While the rest of the world builds trains that roll along the ground, one German city flipped the whole idea upside down literally. The Wuppertal Suspension Railway does everything backwards from what you'd expect. In this German city, the trains don't ride on top of the rails, they hang beneath them, dangling in midair as they glide through the streets and out over a river below. It looks like something out of a steampunk fever dream, sleek carriages swinging gently under a maze of iron scaffolding, floating high above the water while pedestrians crane their necks in disbelief. And here's the truly wild part. This isn't some flashy new experiment. The Wuppertal Schwebebahn has been carrying passengers this way since 1901, making it the oldest electric suspension railway on the planet. For over a century, it's hauled millions of commuters safely through the air, swaying above rooftops and rivers without missing a beat. What looks like a terrifying carnival ride is actually one of the safest, most reliable transit systems ever built. It's proof that sometimes the strangest idea imaginable, hanging an entire train under its track and flying it over a river, isn't a gimmick at all. It's a stroke of genius that has stood the test of time. Union Pacific Big Boy. Few machines in history have earned a name as blunt and as fitting as the Union Pacific Big Boy. This was one of the largest steam locomotives ever built, a towering, fire-breathing giant of the rails that stretched longer than a blue whale and weighed more than a loaded jumbo jet. Built in the 1940s to haul colossal freight trains over the brutal mountains of Wyoming, it was pure, unapologetic power on wheels, designed to drag thousands of tons up steep grades without breaking a sweat. But that enormous length came with a serious problem. A rigid frame that long could never wrap around a curve. It would jam, grind, and derail. So engineers pulled off a brilliant trick. They hinged the locomotive in the middle. The front set of driving wheels could pivot separately from the rest, letting this steel behemoth flex through bends that would have stopped it dead otherwise. Picture a giant so long it had to twist its own body just to round a corner. That's the Big Boy. It thundered across America, hauling impossible loads like they were nothing, a mechanical titan from the golden age of steam. Even now, watching one roar down the tracks feels less like seeing a train and more like witnessing a living dragon forged from iron. Camelback. Locomotive. Most trains hide the driver at the back. This one stuck him right on top of the boiler, straddling a fire-breathing engine like a cowboy on a steel bull. That's the Camelback locomotive. This bizarre beast bolted the driver's cab right in the middle of the engine, perched on top of the boiler like a saddle slapped onto a giant metal camel. That's exactly how it got its name. But this wasn't some designer showing off, it was born out of pure desperation. These engines burned anthracite, a stubborn, hard coal that demanded a massive, extra-wide firebox to burn right. Trouble was, that enormous firebox completely blocked the crew's view, making a normal rear cab useless. So engineers did the unthinkable. They hoisted the driver up front and center, straddling the boiler, where he could finally see the tracks ahead. But here's the brutal catch. The fireman, the poor soul shoveling coal all day, got stranded at the very back, cut off from the driver, unprotected, hanging on under a flimsy little hood. The two couldn't even see each other. Teamwork became a guessing game, and the whole setup turned deadly. Eventually, Camelbacks were banned from ever being built again. Reckless, lopsided, and utterly unforgettable, this saddle-riding steam monster stands as one of the strangest machines to ever thunder down a railroad. Bullet-nosed Soviet streamliners. Long before high-speed rail became normal, Soviet engineers were wrapping their locomotives in wild, bullet-shaped shells and chasing the future at full throttle. These were the bullet-nosed Soviet streamliners, steam and electric engines cloaked in sleek, aerodynamic bodywork that made them look less like trains and more like rockets that took a wrong turn onto the rails. The idea was simple but bold. In the 1930s, the world was obsessed with speed, and a smooth, streamlined nose could slice through the air far better than a boxy, blunt-faced engine. So Soviet designers went all in, encasing their locomotives in curved steel skins that swept back over the wheels and tapered into pointed, futuristic snouts. The result was jaw-dropping machines that looked decades ahead of their time, gleaming symbols of a nation determined to prove it could out-engineer the West. But those gorgeous shells came at a price. The bodywork made maintenance a nightmare, trapping heat and hiding the very parts mechanics needed to reach. Many were eventually stripped back down to bare metal. Still, these rocket-nosed relics remain some of the boldest, strangest, most beautiful experiments the age of steam ever dared to build.